everyone. Welcome to the 2020 International eConference on Interreligious Dialogue. My name is Dr. Darren Slade, and I am the president of the Global Center for Religious Research, which is hosting this year's academic conference. Now, one of the great things about GCRR is that you can attend these academic conferences right from the comfort and safety of your own home without having to worry about hotel fees and travel costs or anything like that. In fact, you're being joined by students and scholars and specialists from all over the world right now. And because each of these presentations are video recorded, the information presented here will be available all across the globe for millions of people to see. Now, for those of you attending live, as you listen to each of the presentations, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask your questions. Our speaker will do their best to answer them at the end of the presentation. And with that said, I'd like to introduce you to my very good friend and the next presenter, Elad Ben David, and allow me to share my screen so I can give a proper introduction. Now, Elad's presentation today is called Interreligious Dialogue as Promoting Islam in Post 9/11 America. Now, Elad is a PhD candidate in the Department of Middle Eastern Studies at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. His research deals with the concept of dawah in America, and he's also a researcher at the Middle East Social Media Center at Tel Aviv University. So, Elad, thank you so much for being here. You have the floor, sir.
So, hello everyone. I'm glad to be here with you today. So, my name is Elad, and I'm a PhD candidate from Israel in Islamic Studies. My thesis research is about the doctrine of Yasir Qadhi as a case study to Islam in America. Just a second, I will share my presentation. Okay, so my presentation is about interreligious dialogue as promoting Islam in America of post September 11, the case of Yasir Qadhi. So my presentation is divided into three parts. First is a background about Islam in America and the effect of September 11 on it. Part two is the figure of Yasir Qadhi and his importance to Islam in America. And the last part is the interfaith examples Qadhi uses to promote Islam in America and to strengthen the Muslim identity. So just a very short brief about Islam in America. Islam in America is considered the third biggest religion after Christianity and Judaism, and consists by a few research center 1.1 of the total population, which means something about 3.5 million. John Esposito, which is one of the senior researchers about Islam in America, even predicted it in one of his books, as you can see, Muslims on the Americanization path, that in the first part of the 21st century, Islam will replace Judaism as the second religion in the United States. As for the demographics about Muslims in America, you can see that the biggest group is from South Asia. After that is Arab Muslims, and after that is Afro-American Muslims, and the rest are usually Christian converts and other branches of Islam. Interreligious dialogue of Islam with Christianity and Judaism in America is a phenomenon that started to increase after the September 11 attacks. Before the attacks, the American Muslim community was considered remote, passive, and socially divided in many aspects, such as religion, politics, culture, and especially within the immigrants and Muslims, who used to be a very apolitical group that rarely voted. But after post-September 11, the waves of Islamophobia and the hostility towards Islam and Muslims caused the American Muslim community to realize that in order to protect the religion and their name, they must enhance their social integration and break through its social loneliness that characterized the community. They understood that they need their voice also to be heard in the politics and in the media. So in this manner, activities of building bridges between communities started to take place, such as the cooperation of the Afro-American community and the Asian immigrants, joint social demonstration, and also action on the political aspect. Out of this activity was elected the first Muslim Congress member, Kate Ellison, in 2006. An essential part of this activity considered a vast interfaith discourse of Islam with Christians and Jews that exists until today. The interfaith dialogue occurs in Islamic conventions, churches, Jewish temples, university schools, such as this one that took place 2 years ago in Dallas, featuring Imam Omar Suleiman, Rabbi David Stern, and Saint Michael Rector Chris Girata. So the interfaith dialogue helps to promote Islam in America for main reason. It encourages American Muslims to present Islam positively, which manages to expose Islam to a diverse audience of non-Muslims and open an interfaith discourse with other religions. So the activity of promoting Islam is called the dawah. Dawah, the word dawah comes from the Arabic word, which means daw, which means to invite, to call. Dawah is an activity of spreading Islam or calling others about it, which is considered one of the essential activities in Islam. Its primary purposes are guiding Muslims on the right path and attracting non-Muslims to embrace Islam. So the action of interfaith dialogue is also well combined in the activity of dawah. Okay, so now we go into the second part of the presentation, which is the figure of Yasir Qadhi. So Yasir Qadhi was part of this generation of young Muslim preachers that saw September 11 as a wake-up call for the American Muslim community and the need to bolster the interfaith dialogue to assist Islam to flourish while being a part and parcel of the American fabric culture. So a little bit background about him. Sheikh Dr. Yasir Qadhi is considered one of America's most prominent Muslim speaker and public figure. He was born in Texas to Pakistani immigrants, did his bachelor degree in chemical engineering, and after that he continued to a more Islamic profession. He moved to Saudi Arabia and did another BA and MA at the Islamic University of Medina. Back then, Qadhi was considered a radical Muslim with extreme views such as his poignant attacks towards the Shia movement and the Holocaust denial. However, after he returned back to America and did his PhD at Yale University in religious studies from 2005 until 2013, he updated most of his extreme views and explicitly distanced himself from fundamentalism. Since then, he has been calling to reform the Salafism movement. Salafism means considered a harsh interpretation of Islam from its conservative form. Like he said in one of his interviews, that he has grown out of the movement. of the Salafism movement, which for him, Salafism does not confront successfully modern challenges. So Yasir Qadhi, for almost 15 years, has been considered one of the more in the US. He's committed to adopting Sharia, the Muslim law, to modern challenges, calls on to followers to donate to social causes, and takes innovative stands on complex issues such as Muslim apostates, tolerance of Muslim of LGBT, and American patriotism. One of Qadhi's main goals is to temper the Islamic identity and the American identity in a secular democracy such as the US. Due to those attributes, he was described by ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, as one of the few people who has combined traditional seminary with Western education. Okay, so now we go to the last part of the presentation, in which I will show examples how Qadhi uses this interface system. So just to taste the attitudes of Yasir Qadhi, we can see from his open perspective, referring to his biggest role model regarding interface, the South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Yasir Qadhi says in one of his conferences at Howard University 6 years ago that he admired very much Tutu, and Tutu is his biggest role model regarding interface. So I will show just a 1 minute video just to visualize for you Yasir Qadhi's character.
I have to say the one person that I genuinely admire immensely is Archbishop Desmond Tutu. That obviously he's from a different faith tradition than mine, and that's the whole point of interfaith dialogue and respect. Firstly, he's got the coolest accent in the world. Secondly, he's not just a theologian. Religion isn't just abstract. It's really changing the world in a positive manner. And I have been following his works and listening to his lectures, and I haven't had the pleasure of ever meeting him, but you want to know my hero in terms of interfaith dialogue and work, it's somebody like, Desmond Tutu.
He's a cool dresser, too.
That too, yeah.
Okay, so my examples of Qadhi is divided into 3 parts. The first is the intrafaith of Shia and Sunnah. The second is the interfaith between Judaism, and the last is the interfaith between Christianity. It's also important for me to note that the emphasis is not just a simple interfaith of dialogue of Qadhi, but the emphasis is how he uses and presents those religions in America, especially Christianity and Judaism, to promote Islam, and by presenting it positively to the American society and the Muslim community. So we go to the first example, the interfaith of between Shia and Sunnah. So in this regard, Yasir Qadhi calls for cooperation, or at least ordinary and mutual understanding between Shia and Sunnah. Shia and Sunnah considered the most significant strands of Islam that were separating after the Prophet Muhammad's death, and had until this day deep theological gaps, and also discourse of enmity. So first, Yasir Qadhi calls to stop ignoring this elephant in the room and try to reduce the mutual hatred between these main branches. That he argues that they have seen better days in the course of the history. To back his argument, he refers to the case of the Shia-Sunni relation in the last 60s and the 70s in America. He claims that his father, who came to Texas in 1963, cooperated with other groups, Shia and Sunni, from various countries such as Iran and Pakistan, to build the first mosque in Houston, Texas. Qadhi explains that the number of Muslims in Texas back then was very, very small, so both the Shia and the Sunni had no choice but to cooperate with each other in order to maintain Islam. Qadhi also argues that many mosques today and other Islamic institutions could not be established without this important influence. So he relates this example of cooperation between Shia and Sunni to these days when Islam, especially after September 11, has been smeared by the media and some politicians. So this reality, Qadhi argues, should awaken the Muslims in America today, just like in the 60s, for the need for cooperation in order to see the forest from the trees and try to get along where the circumstances allow it for the sake of the unity of the American Muslim community. Okay, so now we go to the second example, which is interface with Judaism. So I will address three examples. Using Judaism to justify Sharia in America, a comparison between halal and kosher food for mutual goals, and stories of Israeli Jews who embraced Islam. So for the first example about Sharia, although Sharia is caught as an authoritarian ideology with a negative image that threatens the Western civilization, that might force an Islamic law on a secular states, Qadhi wishes to present the term Sharia as a social and private activity for the Muslims in America. So he does it by comparing the laws of Islam, which is Sharia, to the rules that exist in Orthodox Judaism today, halakha. Using the interreligious comparison with Orthodox Judaism, which still practice many laws like kashrut and Shabbat, it helps Qadhi to present the Islamic Sharia in a better image. By this, Sharia is presented as just another religious system that wants to practice its religious commands, just like the Jews in America can do it freely. So in this comparison, Qadhi also asked to put Islam in the same line as other mainstream religions in America, like Judaism, Christianity, out of the goal to grant Islam a sense of partnership and to erase the so-called negative image that its system of law, Sharia, has. As for the second example about kosher and halal food, in this example, Qadhi uses Judaism for mutual challenges. So in an article that he published in 2012, is Kosher Meat Halal, a comparison of the halachic and Sharia requirement for animal slaughter. So he addressed these religions' reality in consuming halal and kosher food, and addressed similarities between them, such as the prohibition to consume animals like carrion or swine, and also the similarities the similarities between them, such as in the case of slaughter. So here, Qadhi also mentions the importance of building stronger ties between the Muslims and the Jewish community in America as a way to confront mutual challenges. As he wrote in this article, in the end, it's important that stronger ties be developed between observant Muslims and Jews so that we can benefit from each other's experiences, unite against Islamophobic and anti-Semitic efforts to ban ritual animal slaughter. So as we can see, Qadhi uses this comparison to battle Islamophobia. As for the third example, using stories of Israeli Jews, in this example, Qadhi talks about Israeli Jewish people. Some of them considered the Orthodox, even ultra-Orthodox. They decided, despite the difficulties, to convert to Islam. So using this rare Jewish phenomenon, Qadhi wishes to cause American Muslims who were born as Muslims to appreciate their religious identity and to be proud of it, which can benefit the continuation of Islam in America. Also, it seems that by these examples, Qadhi presents Jewish people and even Israeli who consider it a Zionist, which is usually negative among Muslims, out of the dichotomy of black and white, and creates a positive aspect of solidarity that not all Zionist Jewish are bad and things in that manner. Okay, so now we go to the interreligious with Christianity. How I addressed 3 examples. Initiative cooperation of mosques and churches, using the case of Christian fundamentalists to strengthen Muslims, and supporting the Occupy Wall Street movement to better the image of Islam. So, as for the first example, Qadhi supports and even participated in a cooperation between his mosque in Memphis, Tennessee, with the local church. Together for a couple of years, they had a program of feeding the homeless and helping the older people for food supply. Cooperating with the church helps Qadhi to bolster Islam's social side, which most Americans are not aware of it. Most people associate Islam with a jihad action or hijab, the headscarf for women, but presenting Islam as a religion that cares for other people, so by that it creates a potential of solidarity with other Americans. As for the second example, using the case of fundamentalist Christians, Qadhi speaks about how using the law system in America is essential for Muslims to feel part of the society while being proud of their Muslim identity. So he gave the example of the famous verdict, Roe versus Wade, right to make an abortion from 1973. Qadhi argues that even though many Americans, Christians, oppose this law, it had nothing to do with their American identity. He claims that many fundamental Christians who protested against this law were not accused of trying to build a Christian Sharia state. So therefore, he argued that Muslims should use the American law system like the rest of the society, without feeling a sense of discomfort for doing it for Islamic causes. As for the last example, supporting the Occupy Wall Street movement, this example may be different from the others because it's not specific to the Christian people or to the religion of Christianity, but it speaks to the fellow American society as a whole, which is still the predominant culture. So the Occupy Wall Street movement started in September 2011 and demonstrated against the economic and social inequality in the United States. So Qadhi supported the movement's goal and criticized the current capitalistic system and described it as a pharaonic society that enables enjoying the pyramids by exploiting millions of slaves. Using this case, he emphasizes how the absence of American Muslims from this movement activity missed a chance to highlight the Quran's social message that explicitly condemns this capitalist system. So Qadhi refers to a powerful social verse in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hashr, and argue that money should not, that said, so that it, which means money, will not be a perpetual distribution among the rich from among you. So Yasir Qadhi from this surah, he uses it to argue that money should not be in the game of the hand of the rich, so they can get richer, but instead try to help the society and give it also to the poor people. So demonstrating the clear Quran support for social justice, Qadhi parallels the sociality in Islam and its potential to silence the symptom of Islamophobia. He argues that if the American people would have known the Islam's agenda, this Islam agenda supports the battle in corruption, it could improve Islam image and even attract some of them to the religion. So, in summary, in this presentation, I observed the interfaith dialogue and examples of Yasir Qadhi, a well-known American cleric, how he uses and promote and bolster Islam's image and the American Muslim identity. This phenomenon of interfaith was pushed by the catastrophe of September 11 and highlighted the importance that Islam should not exist in America as a foreign religion, but as a religion which is connected to the life and to the society around it. So Yasir Qadhi is one of the big supporters of this activity, hopes that Islam in America would learn and take the pros from every religious group so that Islam will continue to grow and deepen its roots in American society while preserving the fundamental principles of Islam. Thank you very much.
Elad, thank you so much. Hey, real quick, is your dissertation predominantly about Yasir, or is it about Dawa in general?
About Yasir Qadhi.
Oh, okay. It is about him. Is it fair to say that he is wanting to engage in interreligious dialogue so that he can advance Islam in America and gain converts to Islam? Is that fair to say?
I think it's one of the goals behind it, maybe. But as someone who I mean, I've studied him for a few years, so I think that he does that he do it also for the sake of the interfaith. He's a big believer of being with peace with other religions, regardless of will it affect the Islam in America or not. But yes, it's of course it's one of the pros that this activity has, that people can see Muslims in a better image.
Okay. So as a way of countering this other image of radical Islam, for instance, or our American image of what Muslims are, which is more informed by ISIS than something else. Is that the goal? Okay. I'm curious to know, what are your critiques of this? Do you see a problem at all with Yasir's approach? because for instance, I immediately say, well, if the agenda, if the subtext and the agenda is to get converts, then it almost looks like the interreligious dialogue, the dialogue and interfaith relationship. It looks shallow, or it looks like it's just a facade so that he can gain Muslim converts. And so therefore it looks disingenuous. Do you see the same critique or same problems at all?
I think that Yasir Qadhi, I think that Yasir Qadhi is less interested in converts like other Muslims. I think what Yasir Qadhi wants to do, he wants to better the image of Islam. And if people will join Islam, so it's good, but it's not doing it for the sake of okay, I want more American to be Muslims, and I want America to be more Muslim country. It doesn't do it for this sake. He
Okay.
do it for the sake of I have my I have my belief, and I have the right to share it with other people, like the Jews, like the Christian, like everybody else. And it's not just for the sake of okay, I want more converts people to join us, so I will represent Islam in this way or that way. This is as you said, it's a shallow, and it's not what it means. It means to create he wants that Muslims will feel a part of the society.
Okay. That makes sense. Do me a favor real quick. Stop sharing your screen. That way you and I can, there we go. That way we can see a little bit bigger. So, because Yasir recognizes that Islam does have an image problem in the United States, and I would argue it's not just purely because of 9/11 or Islamophobia. Would he agree, and would you agree that Muslims are partly responsible for creating a bad image in America?
In America, specific,
Uh,
the world.
yes, I would say I guess Muslims as a whole. I was originally thinking Muslims in America, are they responsible for helping create a negative image of Muslims? But let's just say Muslims as a whole around the world, do they hold some responsibility for having a bad image?
Yes, of course. Yes, Qadhi always said about terror acts that the terrorist makes. If we can refer to what happened in France a month ago, 2 months ago. So he said that what those terrorists do hurt even hurt the image of Islam, even if more than the West attacks about Islam. So in this regard, he doesn't, try to wipe it out, but he does. He wants to. Yasir Qadhi wants to create an American Islam, and by creating an American Islam, you need to silence the voices outside of America. You need to silence those radicals out of America that they will not affect the Muslims in America. So someone will go to an American Muslim and will say to him, "See what the Muslims in the Middle East are doing." So Yasir Qadhi say that it's not of their business, of the American Muslims, to be responsible about what other Muslims in the world are doing. Their business is to practice their religion, and if some Muslims, some radical Muslims in America do something, so it's the problem. But if some Muslims around the globe are doing it, like ISIS, like Al Qaeda, so it's not. So it's not the problem of the American Muslims. Like everybody trying to put all Muslims in one.
Right. Generalize about everybody. Absolutely. And I remember one time reading a text on Islam, and the author had written, there are just as many versions and varieties of Islam as there are Muslims in the world, meaning you guys are not monolithic. You're not all one mind. And I think that's an important point to make. I'm wondering here, when you describe American Islam, that makes it sound like an Americanized version of Islam. Is that what he means? A version of practicing Islam that has assimilated American culture?
Yeah, in some part, this is one of his problems, that he tried to temper between the Islamic identity and the American identity, because it also leads to secularism, to American Muslims who wants to leave Islam, to have
Right.
doubts about Islam. So the temper is very delicate. But what he wants to do, if I'm sure that you have heard about Tariq Ramadan in France, in Europe. Tariq Ramadan is a well-known Muslim scholar. So what I think that Yasir Qadhi wants to make Tariq Ramadan wanted to make a European Islam. So Yasir Qadhi wants to make an American Islam. He wants that a Muslim would feel that America is their home and not Pakistan or the Middle East.
Okay, so he is definitely promoting a more assimilation approach, um, which I think would be a huge help to decrease some of the stigma around Islam, because I think for a lot of Americans it's still very foreign and still very suspicious, if you will, just because it looks so different and unusual to what we're used to.
Yeah.
If you open up your Q&A box on your screen, I presume you have that function.
Yeah.
One of our attendees asks, what improvements do you believe Yasir could make to his approach? And what do you see him promoting or pursuing in the future?
I didn't quite understood the first part of the question.
Is there anything that Yasir could do to improve his approach to bettering the image of Muslims in America
Um,
that you
I,
can think of?
I really think that he's doing much more than any, and I know many Muslim clerics in America. I think that it is. I don't see any improvement in this regard.
You don't have any critiques of him at all?
Um,
Any constructive criticism that you would want to give him?
well, sometimes when sometimes he doesn't. Um, for example, what I told you before about if Muslims outside of America do something. So Yasir Qadhi say about it that it's their problem. It's the other Muslims' problem. So he's trying.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he's trying to disconnect disconnect Islam in America from the rest of the world. And sometimes it's quite impossible, because
Yeah.
you cannot disconnect what other Muslims do that they both do it for the same Quran, for the same Islam. So we cannot always like say, okay, it's their problem in the Middle East. We have our American Islam. So sometimes you need to be more to confront more what the Muslims do in the Middle East. And this is something that I think I've seen it in his speeches in the last few years, and not just him. More people, more American Muslims, clerics have started to be more open and have the courage to criticize what the
Hmm.
other Muslims in the Middle East are doing.
I was actually going to ask
Yeah.
you that question. Does he publicly condemn acts of terrorism perpetrated by Muslims around the world? Does he publicly
Yes.
say he does? Okay.
100%.
Okay. And then the second part
He,
of that, what was that, Elad?
no, so he even had an interview with Fox News about ISIS, and he said quite clear, crystal clear, that he's against
Okay.
any act of terrorism.
Well, I think it's an important thing for the Muslim community to hear. This is something that, well, definitely people in my communities have been shouting for quite a while, is we don't feel like we see enough public condemnation, not just by Muslim leaders, but by the Muslim community in general. We feel like we don't hear enough public condemnation of it. And now, regardless of whether you guys really are being very vocal and public about it, we're not seeing it and hearing it.
This is the problem.
Yeah, and I think that would really help improve Muslim American image here in America, is if we heard the Muslim community be far more vocal and loud about it. But let me turn back to the first. Yeah,
Yes, I
go ahead.
just have a little story about it. I was in America a few years ago, and I met an American, and we talked, and he told me that he was disappointed that after September 11 attacks, he didn't hear any condemnation of Muslims. So I did my own research about it. I found many condemnation of Muslims, but the problem is that in order to hear or to see those condemnations, you have to do research. You don't like open up your TV and you see it. This is the problem.
Yes. Yes, I don't think the Muslim community is completely to blame in that regards, because I do think that there are some communities that are being very vocal in their condemnation, but are not getting the airtime. They're not getting the publicity. Well, let me return back to the first question. The second part of that question says, what do you see Yasir promoting or pursuing in the future? So does he have any large scale projects or anything that he's working on?
I know that he's working on, as I was talking about American Islam, he wants that the new generations of clerics will not have to go to Saudi Arabia or to Egypt to study about Islam and then come back to America. He wants that the study of Islam, the real study about how to become an alim, will be inside of America. So Muslims will not have to flee and then come back. So he wants to create America into a country that can bolster Islam, not just in the general aspect, but to promote people to be experts about it. I hope I made it clear.
That's interesting. Okay. It sounds like he's trying to get a lot of the a top-down effect, where he's trying to disseminate these better strategies to the larger community of Muslims. Okay. Valerio Marconi is in attendance, and he says that he thinks that Qadhi's use of comparison is interesting as a communication strategy. He asks, is it just a good way to create social conditions for dialogue, or can it be a proper model of organizing dialogue? And Dr. Marconi, I may ask you to clarify and elaborate on your question there, because I'm not sure I understand the distinction you're making between creating social conditions versus organizing dialogue. We'll see if Dr. Marconi will respond to my question here.
Okay.
And while we're waiting for Dr. Marconi to clarify, oh, here he goes. He says, by organizing, I meant a model concerning how dialogue should take place. So Is Qadhi's comparison a good way of creating the conditions for dialogue, or is it just a model for how dialogue should happen once it starts?
Mm,
In other words, if I'm interpreting correctly,
yeah.
is Qadhi's use of comparison, is that just a good way to prepare for dialogue? Or is the comparison something that should be used in the dialogue itself?
Ah, uh, it's a good question. I think that it's connected to the examples that I gave. Some examples are not supposed to be part of this interfaith dialogue because there are examples that he uses to he uses it just for the Muslims. And some examples are universal that he wants to also Christian and Jewish people hear it and to make like a combination. So so, for example, when I gave the example of the stories of Israeli Jews who embrace Islam, this is just for the Muslims to hear it. He will
Mm,
not say it in front of Jewish people or Christian people. So he will just want to the Muslims to see how the difficulties the Jewish people had, and they need to appreciate their Islamic identity.
okay, that's
But in But in other examples, like the Occupy Wall Street, for example, which I said it wasn't just for the Christian people, but in this example of the social example, let's say it, so I think that Qadhi also speak to the whole group of people, Jewish people, Christian people, Muslim people, to be a part of this fabric, social fabric, which is called America. He wants everybody to cooperate with each other.
mm, okay. So it can be a combination for sure in some
Yeah,
contexts. Okay.
yeah.
My final question for you, actually, concerns, and give me just a second. Thought maybe another question came in. Okay, I didn't. So my final question for you then is, what is Yasir's stance on Wahhabism, Wahhabi forms of Islam from Saudi Arabia? I've heard that many Muslims around the world don't like that form of Islam. What is his stance? Does he have a stance?
Well, Yasir Qadhi studied when he studied in Medina for 10 years, so he studied about Wahhabism, was part of a friend of many sheikh, many ulama who were expert on it. I think that you have to separate the question, what is a stance about Wahhabism from academics perspective or from a practical perspective.
Hmm.
From the academic perspective, I think that Yasir Qadhi has his pros and cons about it. He doesn't think that it's something. He doesn't compare it to Al Qaeda or to ISIS, for example. He's still in something you can see in his sermons. He's still, even though things that we consider as radical, something like that, he also finds the pros of it. But if you ask it from the practical perspective, I think that he opposes Wahhabism as to be practiced for Muslims in America.
Oh, interesting.
Because, yeah, because
Because it might be too strict, and it looks too strict and too
yes,
fundamentalist, maybe.
yes, and yes, it doesn't fit. He argues that Islam should fit the environment in which he
Hmm.
lives, and you cannot, for example, the case of niqab, women who cover their face. So he thinks that Islamically, yes, it's women should do it, and it's written in Islam, but he doesn't advise Muslims in the West, not just America, in the West, to do it, because he argues that it can cause it can cause people to become more Islamophobe, and people to look about Islam like in a radical sense. So he he doesn't support it too much in the West. But if you ask him as an academic, as an Islamic expert, so he will support it, and he does it a lot with this confusing stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, there does
Yeah.
definitely seems to be a contradiction, and I can hear him getting a lot of flack for doing that too. All right, wonderful, Elad. Thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this for us. I do want to say
Welcome.
thank you to everybody who attended. And we do have some more presentations today, and of course, a full day of presentations tomorrow. So I hope I see you there. Thanks for coming out and supporting us. Elad, I'll give you the last word.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me to participate here in this presentation. And I really think in a genuine perspective that Yasir Qadhi, like some of the other modern Muslim preacher, can really build a sense of partnership between Judaism, Islam, and Christianity that we can all live together. Thank you very much.